The day the Prince of Darkness and his satanic terrorists arrived, Michael and Christina had just left. The plan outlined their trip to the border of South Sudan on foot. Due to Christina's frail condition, this was mooted to include travel by bus to the border of South Sudan, to be followed by a foot trek across the borderline right up to the city of Abyei. Before leaving, Christina donned the robes of a Catholic nun and put a big cross around her neck and chest. Michael cut his hair short and put a hat on his head. He also shaved his long beard. Before falling into trouble with the Sudanese authorities, he had grown a long beard, covered his head with a big white turban, which made him look like one of the white men who had embraced Islam and traveled to Iraq or Afghanistan to fight against their fellow citizens who were in uniform. Islam would turn those white converts into such hateful people in the eyes of the locals that it would not take a minute for an American journalist or a British aid worker to be beheaded in cold blood. Prior to that time, Christina also was covered from head to toe with abaya and niqab, which made her to resemble one of those burqa-clad in Western countries who walk on the beaches and view with disdain the infidel girls lying on the sand in their sexy bikinis. Some Muslim girls came up with a kind of swimming bikini, they call burqani, which makes each one of them looks like a walking ghost in the sandy beach. It is a kind of burqa converted into a bikini. Just like trying to change Satan into God. The only Islamic obligation Christina did not fulfill was to be genitally mutilated. In short, the couple discarded those outside Islamic appearances and returned to their old Christian identities. Samira once again became Christina, Samir Michael, and their last name Lewinsky. The first place that Khalid Mansour and his terrorists started with was of course the Christian church, the charity home. Questioned, the two nuns spouted white lies to protect their siblings in Christ. Khalid showed them the pictures of Michael and Christina and then warned them against lying to him. Both of them emphatically denied seeing and sheltering any foreigners. Nonetheless, Khalid and his team did not leave a hut, storeroom, or toilet unsearched. As soon as the terrorists left the charity home, the two nuns went on bended knees to ask the Lord to forgive them of lying deliberately. After they had been satisfied that the accursed Indian blasphemous woman was not hiding in the church, the terrorists began to search the town. They combed every house and every shop. They thoroughly searched the local market. Khalid, like a police dog, could use his sense of smell to sniff out contraband. He sensed that some people in that town had information on the subject of his search, but they were withhold it from him. He zeroed his search to a particular house and singled out a Christian family and then used his worst interrogation methods until one small boy spilled the first clue he was to gather that day. It was the same boy the couple met with his old father on their first day of arriving in the town. The words that the boy mentioned were Khoja Abu Dijan, which means a white man with a beard. Usually, Sudanese people refer to the white man as Khoja Abu Shanab, which means he has a mustache. Majority of the African Sudanese cannot grow mustaches even if they want to do so. The crafty man read the discrepancy in the little boy's words to mean more than just a general reference to a generic white man, but to a specific white man that the little boy actually had seen at some point in time. Those few words turned out to be more than the evil man needed to solve his riddle. He knew that there was only one single Khoja in that town and that white person was the Christian nun he had already met and questioned. But, the white nun was she and not he, and she had no beard. The little boy not only mentioned the white man had a beard but also used a masculine gender in his sentence. Khalid concluded that there had to be a white man hiding out somewhere in town. If there is a white man hiding somewhere in this town, reasoned out Khalid, then that person must be the American man who escaped with the accursed Mother Chud Indian woman. The officer had learned nothing useful from Indian multiple cultures except gutter language. Mother Chud means your mother pussy. The phrase also means your mother is a hooker in the vernacular. An Indian might kill you if you call him Mother Chud or Bahan Chud, your mother vagina or your sister pussy. Having been given the first clue, Khalid threatened to rape the 12-year-old daughter of the old man if he refused to tell him where his little son had seen that white man with a beard. The old man was originally from South Sudan and secretly had recently converted to Christianity. He was still novice believer and had not yet grown in his new faith. Wherefore, he yielded to the threat and informed Khalid about the white man and his wife that his son and he had met on the day of their return from a visit to another village. It was 7 days ago since they met them, and he admitted taking the Khoja and his wife to the church where the 2 nuns were staying. Khalid tried to force more information as to what transpired after, but the old man stoically intoned that he knew nothing of what happened after he had led them there. Since the information was already a week old, Khalid resumed by threatening to order the rape of the old man's little daughter if more information was not forthcoming. The poor old man fell on his knees, kissed Khalid's feet and begged him to spare the honor of his 12-year-old daughter. The evil man did not pay attention to the pleadings of the old man and commanded one of his men to go ahead and rape the child. The old man prostrated on the ground and began to throw dirt on his head and cry while the black Arab was raping his daughter in front of his eyes. Even his wife and children were made to witness the act. The wicked man closed the mouth of the child with one hand to muffle her screams from the pain he was inflicting on her. Only after the little daughter was raped in front of her father did the evil Jinni Khalid, the son of Iblis the devil, concluded that the old man had nothing more of value to tell him. The terrible black demon knew where his second stop would be. He left the house of the old man after he destroyed the honor of the old man's little daughter and covered his head with dust and ashes, taking his terrorists towards the charity home. If he had killed the children of the old man and his wife in front of him, he wouldn't have caused as much pain and sorrow compared to what he had forced the simple family to witness. The 2 nuns hardly expected the black Arabs to return. They already concluded their evening prayers, had their last meals, and retired to bed. They were in their night dresses when those evil forces of darkness showed up. Among all the terrorists, only Khalid could speak English. Not all his years of education in India went in vain. He learned nothing moral or useful from those diverse ethnicities of the great multicultural Hindu civilization except a rudimentary knowledge of English and Hindi gutter words. In India, he hated the Hindus with unbridled passion and despised their religion, philosophy, and all forms of their diverse cultures. Not unlike the millions of Indian Muslims, he hated anything Hindu. They live physically in India, but love and are ready to die for Pakistan. While they were studying at the University of Mumbai, Khalid and some of his Muslim brothers went several times for jihad in Kashmir and Bosnia. They had the same mentality of the Western Muslims who came from UK, France, USA, and other Western countries who join ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorist groups operating in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, Yemen, Egypt, and Libya. Khalid confronted the 2 nuns with their lies and demanded to know where the 2 foreigners were, whom the old man and his little son had brought to their church a week ago. The 2 nuns knew that if they admitted sending the 2 foreigners by bus to the border of South Sudan, it would be a simple matter for the terrorists to intercept them halfway with their choppers. The lives of the foreigners lay heavily in their hands. On the other hand, if they refused to disclose their whereabouts, they were subject to the cruelty of the black Muslim Arabs. The white nun spoke first and said she knew nothing about any foreigner that may have come into town. The black nun spoke too and mirrored the words of her compatriot. Khalid wasn't the kind of a man who would hesitate to torture clergy. He decided to blackmail them with the very things he knew that they valued most. He sternly told the black nun that he would command 3 of his men to rape her if she refused to reveal the hiding place of the escapee American spies. The black nun was a Sudanese from south of Sudan. She was 30 years old and in all her life she had not slept with a man. She kept her virginity and believed that she became the bride of the Lord Jesus Christ. She sincerely served him day and night by working among the poor. That day her faith was seriously put to test. She wanted to speak out, but her throat was choked up and hot tears began to fall from her eyes. She changed her mind in a twinkling of an eye, and following her faith of sacrifice and redemption, she allowed her body to be abused by 3 men. After the black nun was viciously raped and brutally tortured, the white nun stood her ground and refused to reveal any information. The evil man used every known painful method of extracting information from the white nun, but he could not make her speak out. He plucked out her fingernails and pulled her hair out of her head. He used sharp knife to cut her flesh. Some of his men flogged her back and feet with rods. Whatever they had done to her body, they could not force her to reveal to them the location of the foreigners or which direction they were headed. Finally exasperated, Khalid told her that if she did not tell him what he wanted to know, he was simply going to shoot her. The white nun responded simply by saying, "My lord told me, do not fear those who kill the body but are unable to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." Matthew 10:28. Then, she told him that her life and death were in the hands of her Lord, and if he wanted her to die as a martyr that day, then that was her honor. For the first time in his life, the evil man stood before an unmatchable faith and courage. All his former victims used to tremble, cry, and beg him to spare their lives. In that Christian church he had found two women who had more fortitude and more faith than what he had in his little god Allah. Nevertheless, the evil spirits that inspired him, directed his darkened soul and blinded his eyes, would not allow him to see the truth radiating in the faces of the two defenseless nuns. He emptied all his bullets into the body of the holy woman of God. He must have known that his first bullet had already sent her to her maker, but he continued to shoot at her dead body until he emptied all the bullets in the chamber of his revolver. Not satisfied with murdering the white nun, he turned his attention to the already battered and raped Sudanese nun. He told her that he would not rape an unclean and uncircumcised woman such as her. He added that it was below his dignity to rape a filthy black slave like her. Then, he laughed and sarcastically intoned that she should consider it a great honor to be raped by Arab men. Before murdering her, he challenged her to ask her God to save her. "You are a black witch who worships Satan," he told her in a hoarse leer. He looked into her eyes and told her that he was not going to waste a single bullet on her. To him, she was worth less than the price of a cartridge. Turning around, he ordered one of his demons to stab her with a dagger. When the black nun reeled with the first stab in her stomach, she smiled and said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." Luke 23:34. Khalid had already heard that verse before and knew who said it and where and when he said it. Furious and galvanized, he jumped to his feet, snatched the bloodied dagger from his subordinate and began to rhythmically stab the nun all over until she was motionless. Her blood stained his hands and boots. When she fell on her back, he could not bring himself to look into her face. Though dead, she continued to challenge him. Her radiant face tormented his darkened soul and filled his troubled heart with indescribable rage. He might have exploded any moment, and if it were not for the presence of his subordinates, he might have fallen on his face and cried like a coward man at his abject defeat at the hands of two harmless women. Instead, he spat his snuff in her face and ground it in with the heel of his boot. After murdering the two nuns, Khalid barked instructions: "Take the bodies of these two witches and dump them in the wilderness," adding, "Do not bury them but set them on fire." As his orders were being carried out, an intense misery and self-loathing from his defeat descended upon him. He secretly wished that his Allah could resurrect them 100 times over for him to kill them over and over again to appease his fury. It was beyond any doubt in his mind that the two nuns knew exactly where the accursed Indian prostitute and her fucking American man were hiding. Torture and death threats that normally worked had failed to extract any meaningful intel from these dirty infidels. He determined not to leave that church until he found what he was looking for. It was the first place that he found any information on the object of his search. With nothing more pressing, he ordered all his men to search the entire charity home all over again. This time, he ordered them to look into every register book or notebook or photo album. The evil servants complied with the orders of their Beelzebub and ransacked every hut. Going through every book and scrap of paper unearthed yet another clue for their master. It was a small piece of paper that contained a doctor's prescription note. The note included the name of the doctor and the patient. The doctor was the Nubian man who was working the part-time shift in the private clinic of the charity home. His name was Dr. Kukotia and the patient's name was Samira Ahmed. Through the police report that the police officer Babakir Osama filed in Khartoum, Khalid knew Samira Ahmed was Aphrodite Khan's pseudonym. He realized he had in his hand the prescription for his quarry, which told him not only who her doctor was but also the nature of her treatment and ailment which had rendered her bedbound for 7 days. Having in hand another strong lead, the evil man ordered his men abduct the doctor and his family members. That task proved to be easy because there was only one qualified doctor in town. Dr. Kukotia was a general physician from the Nuba Mountains, born of a Catholic family. With assistance from a Christian mission, he read medicine in London. Upon his return, he served as a private practitioner for the very same mission. During the regime of the former Sudanese President Ghaffar Nimiri, those Christian missionaries were accused of using food, money, and medicine to blackmail and brainwash poor Sudanese Muslims and convert them to Christianity. The mission was banned from operating in any place in Sudan and its foreign employees deported, with some of the local Sudanese workers placed on trial and jailed. Dr. Kukotia was among the first to be accused as collaborators and sentenced to 10 years. Fortunately, when Nimiri's regime was overthrown through the April uprising of 1983, Dr. Kukotia was released after serving only 3 years in prison. After his release, he returned to his native town and started a private clinic. Soon he met the late white nun and under her request he transferred his private clinic to the town of Muglad. He operated a private clinic in his house and was the doctor on call at the Italian nuns' charity home. Excuse my language, Dr. Kukotia was an ugly man but was blessed with a happy smiling face. When Khalid laid eyes on him, his first remark ridiculed the doctor. No wonder Allah cursed you from birth and gave you this ugly face and also made you an infidel. Dr. Kuko smiled and remained quiet. Don't think by becoming a doctor you have become better than any one of us. Dr. Kukotia smiled again and said nothing. Listen, you ugly black slave, if you don't tell me the truth then I am going to make you carry my shit on your head again. This time, the doctor did not smile. His face showed evidence of discomfort but he kept his silence. Well, those intolerable racial remarks should not pass by without some explanation. The rebuke had cut deeply into the dignity of the Nubian doctor. Some of the Nubians leave their mountains due to abject poverty and starvation and seek sustenance and work in the towns and villages of the black Arabs where they are treated as subhuman and outcasts. Their situations are even worse than the untouchables in Hindu societies. At least the Hindu Dalits or Harijans are allowed to work in Hindu societies, but the Nubians are not allowed proper employment. Nubians are customarily expected to simply carry the feces and urine of the black Arabs. Refusing to do so would leave them with the alternatives of starvation or a life of crime. Some of them, especially the women, choose to distill illegal liquor to sell but inevitably fall prey to the Arab policemen. Many black Arabs do not have modern sewers and plumbing in their homes, schools, and workplaces. Instead, they use big heavy barrels in their toilets fashioned of solid steel to defecate in. It is then the duty of the Nubians to come every morning and to carry off the night soil to the wilderness and bury it in the ground. In big cities, the municipal governments provided these hapless people with tractors and trailers. The Nubians would run around the city like garbage collectors, except they would be collecting feces and urine. Once full, the load would be taken, similarly, to the wilderness and buried in large holes. This kind of work is considered so disgraceful in Sudanese society that a man would rather starve to death or steal and the woman would willingly choose to be a prostitute or distill and sell moonshine than to consider it as a valid form of employment. Among all the thousands tribes in Sudan only the Nubians perform this work. I bow down in honor to, and salute, and kiss the hands of the Nubian man who chooses to do this type of work and earns his living than the man who chooses to steal or the woman who prefers to sell her body or illegal liquor in order to avoid starving to death. When the evil black Arab man, Khalid Mansour threatened to make Dr. Kukotia carry his shit on his head. He expressly meant to remind him that he was still considered a slave, good only for carting night soil. As usual, the Nubian doctor swallowed the insulting racial remarks and remained calm. When we came to your house and showed you this photo, you lied to us and said to us that you have never seen this woman in all your life. Here is a prescription note written by you for treating this woman of malaria. Dr. Kukotia felt the jaws of doom close in on him. He said a silent prayer and then smiled again. After that, he decided to tell the truth. Yes sir, I am the one who treated that woman of malaria. However, as a medical doctor, my profession requires me to protect the privacy of my patients and... Before he could finish his explanation, Dr. Kuka felt a brick hit him on his face. The powerful blow turned him upside down. He was a very short man of slight build, and so his entire body was airborne only to land beneath an armchair. The evil man bent over and dragged him out by his ankle. Then, he used his heavy boots on him. After he felt he had vented his frustrations, he ordered 2 of his men to lay the Nubian doctor before him. The 2 men jumped to the orders of their prince, and brought the body of the Nubian doctor. Then, one of them held his hands and the other his feet and stretched the body of the Nubian doctor prone. Khalid took big and long police truncheon and began to flog the doctor. He flogged his legs, thighs, buttocks, waist, back, and shoulders. The powerful strikes elicited howls and cries of pain from the doctor, with his torn clothing testimony to the pain inflicted on his flesh. The evil man did not stop until he felt tired and exhausted. Dr. Kuko's entire body was bleeding and his face was swollen. Every inch in his body was aching. Although he was shaking and could not control it, still he managed to smile. His smile irritated the evil man, who spat in his face. Abruptly, Khalid changed his terms of engagement from torture to blackmail. He emphatically explained to the Nubian doctor that his men were preparing to rape his women if he did not tell them where the Indian woman and her American man had gone. Dr. Kuko had a wife and 4 children. 3 sons and a 14-year-old daughter. His wife was very young, comparatively, because he married her after his first wife had passed away. She was 19 and heavily pregnant. His 4 children were born to the late wife. All this time, those 4 children were made to stand and watch the torture of their father. The wife was weeping and watching in horror the torture of her husband. To save his wife and daughter from the wicked black Arabs, Dr. Kuko decided to tell the truth. He told Khalid that the American man and his Indian wife had postponed their trip for 7 days under his advice. After the Indian wife completed her 5 injections, he gave them permission to leave. He said further that, Sister Patricia Akal, the Sudanese nun, told him that Sister Catherine De Niro, the Italian sister, gave the couple some cash, dry food, and water before sending them off. Dr. Kuku also divulged that the American couple had left the town late in the afternoon that day and had decided to make it on foot to a BI city. Which was untrue, and a deliberate lie. Dr. Kuku was fully aware that Sister Catherine had given the couple some money for the exact purpose of their bus fares. He was the very man who announced that his patient was still weak and such a long walk through the back country was ill-advised. The evil man looked at the doctor's face, and when another smile appeared, he shouted at him, saying, "Take your ugly women and children and leave. If I ever see your ugly face again, I will not spare you." Dr. Kuku could not believe his ears. Before the terrible demon had a change in his heart, he barked out orders to his wife and children to leave immediate in his mother tongue. Then, despite the pain, he jumped on his feet and followed them. Suddenly all his pains from his beatings and the resultant cuts, bruises, abrasions and contusions felt as if they had been miraculously healed. Even before Dr. Kuku and his family had reached the gate of the charity home, the evil man told his terrorists that they were going to spend the rest of the day in the church. Then, all of them went to the toilets and washed their privates and did the rest of their religious ablutions. That finished, they stood together in 3 rows, led by their Imam, Khalid Mansur al-Hud in the last prayer of the day. They had tortured, raped, and murdered innocent people, and now after washing their filthy private parts and bloody hands at day's end, they offer their prayer to their God Allah. What kind of a God is that, which accepts prayers from invaders, thieves, robbers, torturers, rapists, and murderers? How different is he from the god Baal of the ancient Canaanites, who required the offering of children to him for blessings? The idol of Baal was made out of brass or iron. His worshippers would light a fire beneath him, large and vigorous enough to make his thighs and arms glow red. It was then that the faithful would place their babies on the idol to cook them alive. Today, Muslims do exactly the same evil when they blow their bodies up and kill themselves and their supposedly infidel enemies. Jesus' message said, "Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you," Matthew 5:44, but Muhammad reported that Allah has commanded him to fight against people till they testify that there is no God but Allah, that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah, Sahih Muslim Book 1, Hadith 33. His Quran also said, "Kill infidels wherever you find them," Surah 9:5. After reciting verses from the Quran and offering their prayers to their Allah, the satanic terrorists occupied the huts of the charity home and went to sleep. Khalid kept 2 guards to guard the gate of the compound and 5 to guard his hut. He was certain that he was going to find the blasphemous Indian woman along with her American man either killed by some wild beasts or wandering in circles in the wilderness. When they woke up early the next morning, once again they washed the accumulated filth of the outside world and offered their morning prayer to their god of death and destruction. That done, they proceeded to destroy the place that had given them and so many others shelter. They doused kerosene on all 15 huts of the home and set them afire. They were like ISIS mujahideen who would not leave a place of worship for Christians without burning it down. They only left when everything was utterly obliterated by the flames. The Bible said about them, "Their feet are swift to shed blood. Destruction and misery are in their paths. And the path of peace they have not known. There is no fear of God before their eyes." Romans 3:15-17.